You are listening to the Gritty Podcast, where we talk about all things gritty. Welcome to the Gritty Podcast. I'm Brian Call. I've got Brad Hunt here with me, and today we are going to talk about archery and target archery specifically, because Brad subjected himself to utter humiliation.
I did. I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about target archery, more about equipment, and more of just how myself handles the nerves and pressure, and it's totally different than what you are seeing in practice.
Yeah. I have not heard the stories yet or what his experience was. I wanted to just throw him on the microphone, sit down and talk. But the backstory is Brad got himself a target bow.
Yep.
He's been practicing. And then Joel Turner basically said, hey, young man, if you're going to do it, get some balls and do it all the way.
You still have time to sign up for Lancaster in Pennsylvania. So that's what I did.
And so Brad signed up, flew down there, and threw his hat in the ring and competed at Lancaster.
With absolutely some of the top world archers, not just archers in the United States.
Who was
there? There was Kyle Douglas, Tim Gillingham. You had Brenton Christensen, Bodie Turner, obviously won it the last 2 years. And then there were a ton of other, Matthias, there's a bunch of other names that are not known that are from the United States. They're well known in the target archery world. But to me, it's like
Levi.
Yeah, Levi Morgan was there, a bunch of others. But there was obviously the guys that are from the U.S. and that are both hunting and target archery. I knew Kyle Douglas. He lives right here, not too far from us.
Okay.
But there were a lot of names that were world-known archers that I had no idea about. And they're top of the top,
Well, what's interesting, I want to get the story, what it was like. I've been going to the local indoor arena 3D league here out in Logan. And what is it, the South Archers Club or something like that, South Logan or whatever. Anyway, I should know it. But I cruise out there every Monday and hit some targets. My goal was, I'd like to get all 11s. That's how we're scoring,
All right,
for the top.
Yeah.
Last week, it was this last shoot, I averaged 10.5 per target. There's not a lot of long range stuff. There's maybe 4 to 6 targets.
Yep.
Around that 65 or so, and then a lot of them 50, and then there's a bunch in that 3D that are 18 to 30, 35. They're random.
Yep.
And each night, each Monday is when we shoot, and they sort of swap it around. But it's just been nice to get behind the bow. It's my hunting rig, hold, shoot, execute that controlled shot best I can. There's a little bit of pressure. But it's just a bunch of friends, locals and guys that I've met, friends that I've been friends with for a while right here that go each week.
Right.
And it's keeping me sharp. It's keeping me behind the bow. It's keeping me excited. We have so much snow and it's so cold outside. Sometimes it's hard to get out and shoot outside.
Yeah, exactly.
So the indoor thing and being part of the league is helpful. But it's a whole nother ball game to go and shoot X's that are the size of a dime.
Yep.
And how perfectly inside the dime counts as well.
And where Lancaster is they have their own scoring system, really. So it's all Vegas style, still 3-spot for the pro division.
You need to go and describe that.
So I'm gonna describe that. Yeah, exactly. So what they call the Vegas style shoot for pro shooters. So the highest of the level, you have 3 targets on each paper, and so you will shoot 3 arrows each time.
3 bullseyes.
Three bullseyes, and so it's X's inside the 10 ring, and then you got 9, 8, 7, 6. That's how it goes for the scoring on that side of it. And in Lancaster versus Vegas, so Vegas style, they count your X's, but they just count as an X. It's a 10, and then X is basically to set aside for ties. So it's however many X's you had is going to be the tiebreaker for your 10s.
Okay.
Lancaster, they count those X's as 11s. So you have 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. And so at Lancaster, one of the big things there is you shoot 2 rounds a game, 2 games, which is 30 arrows each game. So you have 10 ends, each end is 3 arrows. And at Lancaster, they have a big prize. This year was a $20,000 prize for anyone that shot a 660, a perfect score in the qualifying rounds.
Last year, we did a couple of seminar events that were like 2.5, 3-day weekend events. We're doing those again this year. We're going to 4 different Shields locations, and we're going to do a seminar. Myself, Ryan Lampers, and Mark Livesey. One of them is a bear tour event.
Boise, Idaho.
The other 3 are elk related. Yep. So if you want to come to those events, they're in 4 different states.
Idaho, Montana, Colorado, and Texas.
There you go. To learn about it, we're calling it the Peaks Tour. Go to treelineacademy.net. Go over there, look up the Peaks Tour information there. You can sign up, come join us. Like I said, it's myself, Ryan Lampers, Mark Livesey. We're going to be at each of those events. Come, learn, and ask us questions. It was a hit last year when we did it, so I think you're going to enjoy this one. It's a fun multi-day event, and hope to see you there. Go to treelineacademy.net and look up the Peaks Tour.
It's like Bodie Turner. It was him and 2 other guys shot a perfect score 660, so which means they hit 11s every shot for 60 shots.
Okay, and what are the distances?
So it's only 20 yards. You're literally every shot is 20 yards on paper, and so it's not that the shooting itself is hard, but it's the mental, and then the pressure when you have, there's about 500 guys plus at a time lined up, and they have 2 sides, so there's about 1,000 guys shooting at one time on the 2 courses. And, it's televised and it's big. And like Benton Christensen, who won the Masters last year, he's a local guy here as well. He won the 50 and over. And so as I get ready to shoot, they put us right next to each other. Of course, cameras and stuff like that. And it's a whole nother, I really learned a whole nother level of shooting under pressure because, right before I didn't shoot till 4:30 on the first day. So that morning, I went and shot 2 games, and I shot 2 300s with, first one was 26Xs, the other one was 23Xs. I was shooting great. You get into competition, and you get the nerves, man, and it's not just for one shot, it's every shot, that pressure. And so I'm really, as I've talked a lot to Kyle Douglas and to Bodie and to Levi, guys that have been doing this for a very long time at a very high level, they're like, yeah, I used to want to think that I want to just turn it on for 60 shots. But they're like, you can't do that. You literally...
What do you mean turn it on?
Turn on your game face and focus for those 60 shots and get in the zone and really concentrate. And they're like, you can't do it. You basically have to learn how to turn it on and turn it off. So whether that's as soon as you click your release on, you turn that on. And then when you're sitting there, you're going to chat with people because there's a lot of people there. There's time, because what happens is with so many people, you have a top and bottom target. So they'll line up on the line. All the guys will shoot the bottom target first, and then they switch out, and you go up, and you have 2 minutes to shoot all 3 of your arrows. And then when they're done shooting, the next guys step up, and you shoot the top. And then halfway through, you swap those. And then now the bottom guy is shooting the top guy shooting the bottom. And so, there's a lot of break in between each shots. And what I learned is trying to just keep the focus and really honing in that focus and controlling the nerves and controlling the shot for those 3 arrows for those 2 minutes each every time, because you got to just completely reset. And it's definitely because, you're trying to be so perfectly accurate every shot.
Right.
That, it's definitely tense. And you think only 20 yards, you're like, it's easy, And that's what I used to think for years and years. And now that I'm kind of diving into the whole target thing, I've been doing it. This is about my 3rd week now of really behind the bow and actually getting to shoot it a lot. And now I'm like, oh no, it's 95% mental and just going through your process,
Holding it on and squeezing and hitting an X at 20 yards. We'll do it down at the bow shop and just stack them in there.
Yeah.
And there's nobody watching. You're by yourself, and you just it's pretty basic.
Yeah, exactly.
But doing it on TV and against peers and other people and repeating that process 30 times, that's a whole different ballgame. And especially if you mess up one out of 30, you're done.
At this level right now, so a lot of guys talked about it that have been doing it for a long time. Kyle Douglas, Bodie. Bodie, he won it at 15. He won Vegas at 15 years old. Next week, he'll turn 18. He won Lancaster twice. He's the only person to shoot 3 660s in the history of Lancaster. He was the only person to do it twice, and now he's done it a 3rd time. And even he talks about how the pressure and how holding your bow is just so much different than in your practice. And so learning how your body reacts and holds that bow. And so that's what I'm trying to figure out. And a lot of those guys have talked about, in the past, as they've been doing it a long time, how much the competition has stiffened up. It was almost unheard of to have somebody shoot a 660.
Well, the equipment's better too.
The equipment's way better. And I think the training, like Joel's training, I mean, you can tell the guys that have taken Joel's Shot IQ instructive classes and those that are kind of not. And I think some of those guys at the high top that still kind of blow Joel's stuff off, you can tell, like, there's probably 5 or 7 competitions a year that they're in the top 3 to 5, but they haven't won it. And they're consistently in the top 3 to 5, but they haven't won it. And I do think it comes down to just those basic controls that Joel talks about all the time, staying focused.
Explain that.
Yeah.
What do you mean Joel's
So
basic?
Joel Turner, so he does Shot IQ. He's been on Rogan a few times, and now he does the Turner method, which is more towards not the archery side of things. It's more like life stuff, professional sports, whether it's basketball, football, baseball. He's been at like the Phillies MLB team, kind of teaching those guys. And so he teaches shot control.
Right.
And we've gone through that. We've been very fortunate. You started it in like 2016, I think, with Joel.
Yeah, I was at his house.
Yep.
And if you followed Gritty for a while, you've seen Joel, and we talk about iron mine shooting and Joel's stuff all the time. But you could find Joel's prodigious now. He's everywhere and that's just a testament to how it works.
Yeah.
It actually works.
Absolutely. And even in like not necessarily the compound side of things, but on the bare bow side of things, I think the second place and third place both were guys that went through Joel's instruction, and you could see it through their shooting, how they shoot the bare bow, like Joel does.
Yeah.
And they hadn't really shot Lancaster much, and they were in the top of the top.
Now, you might run into some pushback, from the Tim Gillinghams and even the Ryan Lampers of the world.
For sure.
Who might say, a controlled shot is important, but also there's some really, Ryan might argue there's a great case on archery hunting itself.
Yeah. For
punching a trigger or being good at punching
Kyle
a trigger.
Douglas is like the perfect example of that, and as I got to know Kyle a lot more through this shoot, Kyle has always been known as a puncher. Like his entire career, he's been a puncher. He's been very
Tim the Hammer Gillingham.
Yeah, exactly. And Tim's the same way. And they're very successful at that. And I do think, like even Joel says, he's like, they have found what works for them and has allowed them to compete on a very high level.
Yeah.
But I also noticed that Ryan Lampers and Kyle Douglas, like they are pretty chill guys as it is anyway. I think temperament wise, how they handle pressure and stuff, they're really cool, calm, collected, and
it's
really
hard to get them to even they're so mellow. It's hard to get them riled up at all.
Yep, exactly. And so I think that command shooting style does work for them. Like it and they're very accurate with it. Where I take somebody like myself, and when I command shoot, like 9 out of 10 times, I will be deadly accurate. But then when I do miss, I miss big. And so, like, what I took from this shoot that was like, okay, that is an absolute win, is I could tell you for all 60 shots in that moment, I could tell you exactly how my shot went. And to me, that, as Joel always talks about in his course, if you've taken it, you understand. If you haven't taken it, I highly recommend it, not just for archery, for life, for basketball, for whatever it is you may be doing. And I was able to blueprint every shot and know exactly what I did on that shot and what went wrong. And that is a huge increase in value to me over the last 4, 5, 6 years, because before I couldn't tell you kind of what went through my shot. Now I'm like, no, I know exactly what has happened and why what happened on those shots. And it's been very beneficial to actually know how to do that now.
Yeah. There's lots of ways, let that arrow go. But, there's something about being able to stop in the middle of your shot process at any time and then resume again, and be just execute. It just drives accuracy.
Exactly. And like I even seen it in boating. I saw it in myself too, especially as the tournament went on, as I was shooting. What I really noticed in that controlled shot, you can tell like most of your trigger puncher guys, they have almost an exact second every shot that their arrow goes off, whether it's 5 seconds, 6 seconds, 7 seconds. And I found myself multiple times. I saw Bodie do it. I saw some other guys do it. They have that controlled shot. And yeah, you want it to go off in that 5 to 6 second range probably because, there's no fatigue there. You're relaxed. You're on target. But then there's sometimes that pin moved a little bit. And so it's like you got to slow it down. You got to pull harder, push with your front hand a little more, stick it into that target. And then that shot might not break for 8 or 9 seconds. And so when you can still hit the 10 or the X after that amount of time, then you're like, okay, no, this is working. And sometimes like when the pin was floating, it had crossed. Like I never wanted it to cross into the red. So you're on your Vegas style target, you're inside 11 and 10 and 9 are yellow. And then you have red for your 8 and 7, and then the 6 is blue on the outside. So those are your 3 colors. I never wanted my pin floating so bad that it was like touching the red. If I can keep it in the yellow, your mind's going to bring it back to center, and I should hit real close to the 10. All I got to do is break that line. And there were like 2 or 3 shots that just the nerves shaking and stuff. It was like that pin went out to the red, and it was like, oh, pull harder, tighten up, to try and like drive that pin as I'm going through my shot process. And it definitely like those were the long shot sequences.
The thing is, holding your bow with the right form, anchoring in the right spot, pushing, pulling in the right way, getting on the trigger, all that kind of stuff, the release and executing. There's all a lot of practice that's useful in that. But let's say you command shoot, you hold and then you time it, you punch it like each time. That is not really a practice session to me.
No.
That right there, I don't need to practice.
Right.
I've shot a bow long enough, like holding it there, putting the pin on there and then going, now, like there's not a challenge in that really. In a lot of ways. And a lot of times I hit well if I do that.
I would agree. I think it exponentially elevates when it turns into the target archery side. Because as from what I'm finding in just my little experience in this, like, and that, whether it's balancing the bow and how the sight is set up and how the arrow rest is set up and all this stuff, I'm finding that, yes, that's true, but the accuracy to get that, it continually gets smaller and smaller and less accurate the less you can control that, and so it's just those little misses are so huge. Like when I dropped that first 9, which was only 1, I instantly knew I was out of the qualifying. Like knew right away.
I know, like when I'm up there shooting and I'm doing a surprise release, and if every time, whether I hit the bullseye or not, if every time when that shot breaks, it was controlled, like it actually went off. It's like, oh, there it went. When it breaks and it goes like that, for me, that's the sign of a good shot, not where the arrow hits.
Exactly.
Because that is the mental control I'm trying to master and develop over the course of years. So when I go to, the archery 3D shoot and I'm up there and I'm dropping arrows and let's say there's like 30 targets and like 27 of them, it was a controlled surprise. And then there's like 3 where I was like almost at the end and just
a little dump or something.
And I just sort of like almost like, did I dump it or not?
Yeah.
Like, one thing I have noticed was the closer I am to the actual, if I dump at the last, like the closer I am to the actual surprise break. When I dump, the more accurate the shot, which is another testament to trying to still make it a surprise.
Correct.
But there are times where I'm like, well, dang it. So when I left, I averaged 10.5 per target with an 11 as the high. I come back and I was like, well, the shots that didn't go well were the shots that I dumped it.
Right.
And there was like 3. And they were my worst shots of the night.
Yeah.
But there have been times where it's some of my better shots, but they were the worst shots of the night. And I'm like, And those were the shots that I considered also as my failures. Like,
Right.
those are the shots where I kind of just got lazy and just, I don't know. I failed mentally.
Yeah. And what I've learned is the guys that are the top of the top, like Bodie, I was fortunate. I stayed with them, got to pick his brain a lot. Trying not to too much, but same time, like same with Kyle and same with Tim Gillingham and Levi. I got to talk to them a bunch. But what I learned is someone that is doing a controlled shot. Yes, that is always your goal, is to have that controlled shot and also incorporate that into the accuracy.
Yeah.
What I've got and I've taken from those at an elite level is when those shots don't always go as planned, whether it's the shot, yes, it broke, but your pin was floating elsewhere. What their goal is those shots that ended up not being a great shot are still so forgiving that they're not missing where they're aiming.
They're missing small.
They're missing small.
Which is what I've always said for a while. I'm really good at missing small.
Correct. And like I think what I'm finding with the target archery, like that is such a small window to miss that like you have to have your bow dialed, and that so not only on the personal side of things on how you shoot, but then on the bow, how the bow is set up. Like you have to have it set up so good.
And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But that was one thing I learned years ago when I first really started to dive into archery hardcore and become a really good shooter. What I realized was I had shot for a decade with poorly tuned bows, poorly set up, poorly. And so a lot of times when I thought I wasn't shooting well, a lot of it was actually the bow not being set up right.
But in turn, hurt your confidence on how you're shooting.
Right. So so on that same vein, in that same, so I want to break down a little philosophical discussion here on, when you're in that situation, the adrenaline spikes. And people are watching you, and all of a sudden you're just like, you kind of freeze. There's a physiological response to the adrenaline. It's there. It's just like when a giant elk you've been hoping to see and stuff walks out, or a big buck, and now's your moment, and it's a gimme shot, and yet guys miss.
Yep.
They black out, whatever. Okay, when that adrenaline comes, that's a real thing. I want to talk about that. What do you do when that adrenaline hits you like that? Wham! Okay. And now you're like, surprise release, and you're just holding it there, but it's like just jittering everywhere because there's a physiological lack of control. So when that hits you, how are you still gonna let it float, or are you gonna pin it and punch it? Like,
So
how do you get?
I talked to this Joel much like before the shoot, quite a bit, about a week or 10 days before Joel Turner, because I started indoor league, same style, Vegas style shoot, 3-spot shoot. And even though it's just the guys there in town shooting, like when the league actually started, that first night of shooting, like I could feel, and when I'm so new to target archery, I could feel like, oh, there's a little bit of adrenaline. Like we're just playing, but we have 8 weeks of shooting, but there's some adrenaline here.
Yep.
It's like 10x at Lancaster or anything like that.
Yeah.
But what I found myself in as I talked with Joel was he's like, that's why you've got to get so loud in your head. Like that's where it comes down to. And I really learned that. So for 10 days straight, well, about 7 days, I guess, 7 days straight in my garage shooting, I could only shoot 18 yards. Kids go to bed. I set the target up in the garage and I sit in the living room and I can get 18 yards. My wife was like, what are you doing? And I would literally talk out loud, drawing my bow.
Loud and
aim. Like loud. I'm talking through everything and I'm like, okay, here I go. I'm already going through my click. I'm talking like I'm pulling, keep pulling, push harder with the front hand, pull, boom, and it breaks. And I found myself during that, what really helped me was, I'm not talking out loud next to all the guys that are shooting.
Yeah. But
in my head, I'm just like, I'm screaming as loud as I can be. And that was did
it decrease the adrenaline?
Absolutely. It didn't decrease the adrenaline, but it kept me present. And it really just helped me to shoot my shot.
I suspect it does decrease your adrenaline. This is the philosophical part.
I would say that. I mean, my pin didn't stop shaking any less. That's for sure.
One of the things I contend with is having been in places when I was younger, like a mountain lion I missed with my bow at like point blank range,
right.
I panicked. I blacked out. I just flung that arrow.
Yep.
There's no reason I shouldn't have just center punched that thing.
Right.
Other times I had an elk at like 12 yards, giant 6x7, biggest bull of my life, like unmissable. I missed.
Yeah.
Like, how do you miss? And these are moments where there's just a total brain meltdown.
Correct.
And it's so discouraging and frustrating for archers to be in that position. And it took me years to figure out, how to execute in those moments and become a killer instead of, a choker.
Yeah. So there's a couple things here. Like, me, my hands don't ever sweat. I have dry hands.
Yeah.
Never had wet hands. Right after the first end, so I shot my first 3 arrows, the Lancaster trailer is right behind me. I went and bought a towel, and I bought grip tape to put on my bow.
Yeah.
Right there, because my hands were sweating. My hand was actually so I'm always I found in the target archery right before every shot, because I think it's so critical on hand placement and how you're pulling on the bow. So every shot, before I actually draw, it's I make sure just a double check. The hand is in the right position. Then I come up and I draw, because
I always my brain is so different than Brad's.
I know.
So I'm like, if I pay attention to every detail like that, it sort of, I find it debilitating. So for me, I don't think about anything. I just draw, start to aim, slowly squeeze, and I score great. But when I'm like you, and I'm like, okay, this, everything, hold it here, get the position, make sure I'm anchored right, I completely start missing badly, and I don't know why.
Well, my target, my hunting bow, I mean, that's the thing. I can grab it, I draw back, and I don't do that.
Yeah.
But I'm finding those are those millimeters of misses, at that
it's
that
different
level.
What you're doing,
it's different. And when you do get that adrenaline, I thought I had my bow perfectly balanced, in target. In practice, I could just put it on there. My pin almost never left around the 10 ring. It was sitting there and it was just break. And I was like, man, I had so much confidence in the world.
Yeah.
And so when I bought the towel, I bought the grip tape.
Yeah.
And I put 2 more ounces on the front of my bow, because instantly with that adrenaline, I was holding the bow completely different. Just the tenseness, I think. And so I as I talked to other guys before the shoot, they were like, yeah, that's why I run a lot of heavyweight up front.
Okay. So I'll finish kind of my train of thought and you tell me what you think. I feel like as I got older and I learned how to do a controlled shot, I would do these 3D Total Archery Challenge events, and I would be paired up with a bunch of awesome dudes like my peers, from Ryan Lampers to, Corey Jacobson to Joel Turner, Elk Shape, whatever. We'll have these guys all out there with us shooting, the guys from Heartland, Bow Hunter,
Greg Ritz, all those guys. Yep.
Yeah. And so it comes with this pressure, which I invite. I love it. I want it. Heap it on me.
Yep.
I'm out there and I'm shooting with all these guys. And because if I can't make it with those guys watching and being filmed and every target being public viewable, as accountable in that way, well, then I'm not going to make it when the elk walks out either.
Right.
If I don't have a controlled shot in that situation, I'm not going to have it when the elk pops out.
Correct.
And what I learned over the years was when I step up to the plate, I got my range, I got my butt, and I'm coming to full draw. The anxiety and the adrenaline, it's 100-fold less nowadays than it used to be, because when I step up, I know all I have to do well is miss small.
Right.
And to miss small, all I have to do is let that pin just go all over the target, hold it kind of the best I can. It doesn't have to be perfect, and slowly squeeze. That's how you, and have faith in the end result. That's it. So I put it up there. I'm like, well, it sure looks like I'm going to shoot this 3D target at 70 in the ass because my pin's all over it.
Right.
In my head, it seems like that pin is everywhere. In reality, it's kind of figure 8 and in the insert.
Yeah.
And I'm slowly squeezing. I'm nervous. Everybody's watching. There's some adrenaline I'm shaking, but I'm like, Brian, all you have to do though is not punch.
Yeah.
All you have to do is let it do the thing and slowly squeeze. It's going to get somewhere close.
Right.
The margin of error is going to be real small.
That's so true.
And so the anxiety and the adrenaline, I used to step up and go from target to target. I wonder if I'm going to even hit the target this time, or if I'm going to like do some stupid, embarrassing.
Yeah.
Those concerns are gone. It's not a matter of, you know, whether I'm in the insert or not.
Mhm.
That's almost a guarantee, because all I have to do is hold and squeeze and let it be a surprise.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden the arrows just stack where they're supposed to.
For sure.
It's like a miracle.
And I'd
thing.
100% agree with that. And I, even the same way, like, you know, as we've been shooting and as I've been with you for the last 4 or 5 years,
Mhm, mhm.
you know, same thing. I feel that same way. Pretty confident. Like I can walk up on a 3D target. I can shoot it when we're shooting with those guys. We do it at the summit.
Yeah.
But it was on a whole nother
Well,
level.
I think what you're getting at is thoughts are not thinking.
Correct.
Which is kind of what I'm getting at
Yeah.
too.
Yep.
Thoughts are not thinking is something Joel will say to us.
Yeah.
And when you're saying get loud in your head,
Oh, I'm overpowering the thoughts.
right. And the thoughts are, who's watching me? I'm on TV. This thing here, or I got this guy next to me.
Or it could be aim. I need to aim, when
Right.
it's like, no, you're not aiming. You got past the aiming point like a long time ago.
Your pin is there.
Now there are multiple times it was like I did drop below, so it was like reset. So I went back to the aim, and then it was okay, here I go, back to pulling through my release, pull that hand. So yeah, like in a couple shots, I went back to the aiming room like 3 times.
Well, and I think what happens though is when you're thinking, instead of when thoughts are not thinking, when you're thinking, and you're executing, you're focused on the process,
for sure,
which is how I overcome the adrenaline. And it's not like it's not there. It's just way less, because I know that I'm in control of the outcome, and the outcome's simple.
Right.
The outcome is, I should say, easily achievable if all I do is let it float and execute that slow squeeze.
Yeah.
If I just do that, then I kind of know everything else will fall
and I think
where it needs to be.
I think too, kind of in my mind is, you know, when I'm on a 3D target or even an animal, it's like, I'm not trying to, I mean, obviously I want to as much as possible. And, you know, we're competing for score and stuff on 3D. Yeah. I want to 12 ring it. But at the same time, I'm like, if I am in that vicinity, like I accomplished what I wanted, and my anxiety is not that high because that's what I want.
The anxiety is, it increases, for example, when you're trying to hit an X or a dot.
Correct. Which is the size of a penny.
And it increases when you're trying to shoot, like, for example, let's say a softball-sized hole through a steel target.
Right.
Right? It's like, well, I hit that softball-sized hole, you know, at 20 yards, you know, 50 out of 50 times.
Right.
Now that there's a steel plate around it and my arrow is going to explode if I miss, now you're like, all of a sudden you're punching, you're panicking, you're losing that control. But the truth is, you're back to that, okay, all I really have to do is just execute the process.
Talk myself through it, exactly.
And be louder than the adrenaline, louder than
for sure
all of that. And as long as you stay in the process, I think it's calming. I think it reduces. First of all, the other part is blacking out. I mean, part of blacking out is completely going into auto mode. You know, you don't even remember what happened because you went into fight or flight, adrenaline spiked, and you didn't think through anything. You just panicked. You just did something. And afterward, people were like, well, where did you aim? I remember being like 12. Well, where were you aiming?
The dirt.
I don't remember. Just boom. You know, it just, I don't know. And that was so frustrating and discouraging. But then later you stay focused in that, you know, I remember shooting free throws on the line in high school, in big games. And, you know, when I was new to it, I just completely bricked it. No reason. I make that shot, I'll at least get close. What the heck? It's just a sheer like blackout. Then later, through experience, exposure, you stay focused. You're blocking out all there's a whole crowd. The game is on the line. That's all gone when you're doing it right. And you're just like, dribble, you're in your zone. This is my process. You're focused on your flow. You're loose. You're keeping your hands loose. And there's this, I learned, like, when I'm focused on stomping on the throat of my competitor, when I'm more interested in beating and dominating someone else in that situation, it overrides the what if I fail sort of panic and like, it's like, no, I'm like, I could turn that. That's why I think sometimes your Kobe Bryants and Jordans and stuff, when they're talking about how much they're just grievance collecting the whole time, there's this whole, when you're there to prove someone wrong and to beat someone else, and they slighted you, said you couldn't do it, you would amount to nothing, you're a joke, you're a fake, you're a pretender, then there's this, and you harbor every one of those.
Right.
It's hard to get nervous in that situation because you're so focused on revenge and conquering that you override it. Hey, if you like our show and you want to support us, you can do that by shopping at Stealthy Hunter, a great partner of ours. They sell rifle covers, which we use on every single hunt. They sell glassing pads. They sell supplements. They got CBD gummies, other products over there. Check it out. Make sure you use the code GRITTY. And now, back to the show.
And I think, to put it in like an easy perspective, somebody that, that hasn't done much target archery, maybe they've done tack and stuff. You always have the people that walk up and, somebody will say, or you see, that tree is right, like real close to where that my arrow target is going to be. Where my arrows go through the trajectory of my arrow. And so the first thing they think of is like, don't hit that tree. And I would say it's a high 90% when that they think that, like, they hit that tree.
Right.
And I think that's where overcoming the thoughts.
Yeah.
And talking through that is where,
okay,
like, you and I don't have that anxiety when we step up to the shoots like that.
No.
It's never, we've shot tack, I don't know how many times with one arrow.
Because I know if the pin is floating where it's supposed to be, and
as long as I'm not blowing up knocks, I'm shooting.
And I execute a surprise release, I know it's going to miss the tree. So there's no anxiety for me.
Right.
Because I know it's just going to go where it's supposed to go.
Put the pin, process, trust your setup of your equipment too. And that's what I think, on the target side of things, is I'm really finding that's why there's all the weight and stuff involved. Some guys shoot really light, and every bow is different. Some guys are only run like 4 or 5 ounces in the front. And even now I've noticed Bodie, like, he has increased his weight on this particular bow. He's shooting like 10 or 11 ounces up front, where before it was 3 or 4.
I shoot a light bow way better than a heavier.
See, and I talked to a lot of people about this, and I think in the target side of it is, yes, that is true. But if the bow is balanced perfectly to where, when you're pulling back on it, pushing
on the target
hard,
side, it could be different.
And that's what I'm finding is different, because I was like, I don't want a bunch of weight on my bow because that's gonna like make my arm tired. I got 60 shots to go through. But then as I've explored and talked to a lot of people, and there's some guys that are running like 40 plus ounces on their bow, which is insane.
Well, the thing is when some of those bows are meant to shoot,
correct,
in a way that hunting bows are not.
Yep.
For me, I think what it is my brain. When my pin, and I'm shooting a super lightweight bow, and the pin is there, it's moving off the target, but it's back on the target so quick. Right. It's constantly, so it doesn't get in my head as much as I squeeze through, because it feels in my brain like that pin is always, it's micro shaking constantly to such a degree that I don't get in my head, oh, I moved off target, oh, now I'm back on, because it's just so instantaneous.
Yeah, for sure.
When I have the heavyweight, even my current bow, it's a little more heavy. When it comes off target, it takes a minute for it to come back on too. Yeah. And since I'm not timing a punch, right, I'm slowly squeezing. When it comes off, I get a little anxiety that I wouldn't get if the pin was like just jittering on it. You know what I mean? So I think it's
for sure
really my mental state, not any kind of physical reality.
For sure. And I would agree with that. And as I'm finding though, on like with especially the target, and even guys like they have the bow hunter class there. So I got to talk to quite a few of the guys that are in the bow hunter class, which they have regulations. You only can have like a 15-inch bar up front, not the 30 or 33, 37. And then you can only have a certain length of bar on the back as well, which that hinders your weight and stuff. And what I'm finding is your pin, might still do the whole movement, but what it is the absolute forgiveness of that bow when that arrow releases, that it's not doing something weird coming off. But then also, as you're holding it back. Like you may have 30 ounces or 40 ounces of weight plus 50 ounces of weight on your bow, which is pretty heavy, but you actually don't even know that it's there because it's so perfectly balanced that it's like, it's just sitting on a pendulum. And I've had to really,
we know that like when you carry a backpack with the load in the right spot, you load your backpack correctly and 110 pounds feels like
60, 70,
75. And then you go and load a 60 pound pack all wrong, and you're like, I feel like I'm carrying a 100-pound load.
Exactly, too low.
Balance is everything. Yep, for sure.
And I'm really finding that when it comes to the target archery side of things, and even now, like I came home and still like moved a few things just to even more so balance the bow. Like as I learned what my body reacts to under those pressure situations, because that's like those are the ones that I think really matter because. That obviously is where the qualifying and the dollars are.
Well, Brad, traditionally, like when you're not around and Ryan and I are together, we'll talk about, how unbeatable you are.
Right.
And then how beatable you are like the next day.
Right.
Like you're too streaky. You're either, perfect or falling apart.
For sure.
There's not that middle ground enough.
Right.
Like there needs to be more of that sort of like, again, like average score being on a range, like at least 8s.
Yeah.
Instead of like 11, 11, 11, 11, 11, 11 dirt.
Right. And that's what I'm finding, when I look at my 3/4 of the way through, like the last 3/4 of my scorecard. And I'm like, dude, I am, even though I didn't qualify to go to the finals and stuff, I'm like, I am 100% I'm so happy on how I shot. I had some like little small mechanical issues that, as we figured them out, I was grateful to have like guys like Benton Christensen and stuff that were there close that have been doing it for 30 years kind of know. And once I figured out those equipment issues, like those few shots that I dropped, like they came right back and I started shooting incredible, shooting great.
Yeah.
And so now I'm like, okay, I can take that now into, so like, we got the Bear Tour in Meridian, so I'll be there, but there's also a big shoot that I'll be doing at the same time. So I'm going to be bouncing back and forth but on that Saturday. But I'm really learning. One, I think I'm learning a lot about myself too.
Yeah.
And also, I will say the target stuff is addicting. Like,
well, I think any of that stuff is, it's putting you're the man in the arena right now.
Yep.
And, a lot of people are too afraid to be the man. And
I have been for 10 years. I've looked at target archery for 10 plus years and wanted to do it. I never have.
Having filmed myself on hunts and also podcast, interview people, you're the man in the arena. And when that happens, you can be totally wrong about something.
Right.
And embarrass yourself. You can totally underperform and wet the bed and do something embarrassing as well. And but see, that hardens you. It helps you learn. It puts you in that position so that the next time you're better. And without putting yourself on the line, it's just like nothing ventured, nothing gained. The old Japanese parable is, you cannot get the tiger cub if you do not go in the cave.
Yeah. Right.
It's like not that I don't know why you'd want the tiger cub, but they do over there.
Yeah.
But
it's just like, I mean, you never know your full potential unless you go do the hard things you're uncomfortable with. I say to my kids all the time, you
have to be willing to utterly fail in the face of millions or tens of thousands of onlookers to really get the most out of life. And too many, sadly, are afraid of, well, what if I can't do it? And then they sidestep or they avoid the embarrassment, the challenge. And so they never know. That Theodore Roosevelt quote about the man in the arena where he says, at least the man in the arena, when he goes out, at least if he fails while daring greatly. And he suffers and he feels that bitter loss. But if he wins daring greatly and he feels what it feels like to win. And he's like, and so at the very end of the day, at least, whether he wins or fails, at least he isn't like the cold, timid soul who neither knows victory nor defeat because he never put himself out there.
Right. Yep. Exactly. And I keep saying it, but man, did I learn so much about not only myself, but also equipment, like on the target side of things, just how, as I talked to Paige Pierce and stuff like that. I mean, she's won the world for the women's side of things. She's one of the best archers, not only for women, but for men too. As I talked with her quite a bit and stuff, I mean, the amount of time and detail that they put into that stuff is, I mean, just moving the rest. She's like, I might spend 7 days just microtuning that rest to where my bear shafts are hitting.
You have to be at a certain level.
Correct.
For that to make any difference,
For
by
sure.
the way.
Yes.
It's sort of like bow tuning. A lot of times a guy will say like, I think it's my bow. And I'm looking at you shoot. I'm like, you have a long way to go before you could even notice your bow being causing you a problem.
Right.
The issue isn't the bow.
Yeah.
So often you only learn these nuances about shrinking of the peep on a bright sunny day and where you line that up, and you only learn like, oh, how I turn my wrist up or down.
It causes me left or right.
Yeah, it only happens when you're at a level of shooting that is controlled enough or accurate enough that now those details start to make a difference. So too many guys, I think, especially the average Joe who pulls his bow out a few weeks or month before the season begins, and haven't really done an iron mine shooting, Turner method type, haven't learned how to do that.
Yep.
You're just sort of, what are you pissing in the wind? You're not really, actually, you can tweak your bow all you want, but 90% of your problem is your mental piece. So don't pursue too much. I'm like, I do that a lot when I get a new bow set up. Unless I'm dialed in my shooting, the balance is right, I'm not torquing, and I'm squeezing through and everything's, it's like, why do I even bother too much with tweaking my bow setup so it's perfect when I know like it's me.
Yeah, exactly.
And how I'm shooting. It's a real issue.
Yeah, it was fun. It was eye-opening. It's like a pressure and adrenaline that I really haven't ever felt.
Well, I would say this, like, it's a lot different than playing a game of basketball or football.
Yeah, for sure.
Like you've done a lot of sports. We both have. It's a different sort of pressure.
Yeah.
There's pressure in both, right? But you're actively moving, rolling, jumping, catching, you
get in a flow state.
Yeah. And you're sort of exploding. There's no flow state.
Yeah.
In archery.
And I will say this, and
it's a mental control
for sure.
They're totally
and I
different.
think, like even right now, like, I've played in some big basketball games and like played on like the Utah Jazz floor and stuff like that. And every time I was like, just go do your thing. Just go play basketball. And I think I've done it so much that whether it was football, basketball, it doesn't matter. I had done it so much that it was just, go
carry that into archery.
Do your natural thing. Where right now I'm trying to gain that because like my bow hunting side of things, like, I mean, we can go out here and I can grab the bow and I can shoot and be fine. On the target side, it's so new to me that I'm like, I think there's some more added pressure that maybe doesn't need to be there.
Yeah,
but at the same time, it's like, I look at Bodie and I look at Kyle Douglas and Tim Gillingham, and I'm like, these guys have done this for forever.
Look, when you step up on a free throw line and you go to shoot a ball,
right?
You can't do a controlled shot process.
Right.
You can't. You have to like begin the flow and go through it.
Yeah.
And finish off. And it's just a feel. When you're throwing a spear or a rock or something, it's similar. A baseball, there's like this flow, and you're not going, the tweak is a little bit off, and so I need to change. Like, you're sort of more or less feeling it. When you step up to the line with a rifle and you're aiming, or a bow and you're aiming, you're doing something totally
That's right.
different.
We'll say like Joel, the Turner method side of things, that's what he is started into now with like the jump shot and the free throw and the pitch. That's what he's dove into now on that side of things, is like, okay, how are you blueprinting how you just threw that pitch?
Sure.
And that's where he's changing that game. And he's been doing it in the archery and the rifle world for a long time. And that's where now he's changing it on the other sport aspect of things. But I will say those guys where I'm comfortable to go play a basketball game, they're so comfortable going and shooting their bow in front of hundreds of thousands of people because they've been doing it enough. I'm not quite there yet. I'm trying to get there.
And like you know, I was like, well, if I just shoot 100 arrows a day, I'll just get the feel and I'll know exactly. And you just think, just like I did when I was young, shooting free throws all the time and threes from deep, like I get the feel and and the more I did it, the better I got. And I kind of had a process and, you know, I tweak my form here and there, but you start to left hand, right hand, you just get these feels, dribbling, all this stuff. When you take that and you try to do it to archery and you just shoot 100 arrows, you're making yourself worse and worse all the time.
Right. You can, for sure.
Most guys,
absolutely can,
I'd say the rare exceptions are out there. Like, you know, Lampers did a command shot for a long time. He can do it both ways. But most guys would develop real bad habits. Their precognition movements are getting input into the shot.
Right.
They don't even know it. And they're just slightly like flinching or whatever on every single shot, dropping a bow arm. You'll have guys that are moving the target up and they're like, as soon as the pin gets, then you punch it.
A lot. I saw it a lot.
And it's bad.
Yeah, I really saw it a lot. I mean, on the compound side of things, but I did see it a lot on
the drive-by shooting,
the bare bow and the recurve, like the Olympic archery style stuff. There were some guys that was like, they're here, and then as they're dropping, as soon as that thing hit the yellow, it was like, boo! Just let it go. You know, you don't see it as much in the compound with the sight, but it's there. And that's where I'm like, okay, I take 100% a win out of this because I did do so much shooting up as much as I could up to this tournament. As I went through the tournament, I was like, I feel like the shooting was still really good. And what I just noticed and I have to change is just a little bit of the balancing and how the pin is floating and stuff because of that, the tenseness of the situation, the adrenaline rush. You just end up holding your bow just a little different.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think that there is, you know, the more you learn to do that controlled shot and you master that mentally, your anxiety decreases, the adrenaline decreases, and you start to know, oh, all I got to do is kind of hold and shoot. You know, Brian Barney is one of those people who basically never does a command shot, never punches it. It's always like a surprise. Then you have like a Sam Davis who always sort of command shoots it.
Exactly.
And both are really good. You have a Tim Gillingham and then you have like a Bodie Turner.
Yeah.
Both can be super effective. I would say that the surprise release, the Turner method is much more repeatable and is a recipe for success for all people.
I would agree.
Not just a certain subset of people who have a kind of, I think Ryan and I were talking about it over the weekend, and those really strong dudes with big draw, like, you know, like we're talking about like a Levi or a
like Bomar or
Bomar, Gillingham, Sam Davis. These dudes seem to, those big dudes, and Joel has talked about this, they seem to hold and punch better than more, you know, frailer, smaller dudes or weaker guys. Those big jack guys holding their bow back, they seem to be able to lock on and punch and put it in the place. I don't know what's going on there.
Right.
But like I said, I think the controlled shot is basically it's anxiety reducing. Does it cost people some shots? Yes, because, you know, Brian Barney might get to full draw, be going through his process, and the animal moves. And had he just punched it, he could have got that arrow in before, and now that moment is past. But I would argue probably more often than not, the end result is better. Like, I feel I've passed on a lot of shots that I probably could have made for that closer, better shot, and it almost always. And that's with a rifle as well. It almost always pans out better.
Yeah.
Every now and then, like Brady's bear on our first bear hunt we did together, he probably would have dropped that thing, no problem. But but he didn't take that shot. He waited to try to get closer, and then we never got that shot. That's happened to us in other bear hunts as well, where it's across a river and on the other side.
Many times.
And so there's a case to be made, like, but most of the time, patience, controlled shooting, that's where it's at.
Yeah, it goes to your benefit, usually.
So anyway, that's it for today. Hope you guys got something out of this discussion. Let us know what you think in the comment section below. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you on the next episode. Stay gritty.